Chair recognizes the gentleman from Cedar, Representative Kaufman, for opening remarks on HF 310.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good evening, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. House File 310 prevents a defendant from using a person's sexual orientation as a mitigating factor in a violent crime. It's hard to believe what I'm about to say, and we shouldn't even have to be here today doing this, but we do need to do this. Because in other states, several other states, unfortunately, defendants have been successful in substantially lowering their sentence by using the very defense that we're looking to close and ban today. People have actually been murdered, and their crime was their sexual orientation. People have actually been brutally beaten to within an inch of their life. Their crime, their sexual orientation. There's a particularly heartbreaking story, but Representative Bennett tells it far better than I do, so I'll leave that up to her in her comments. But Representative Bennett, I want to thank you for working with us on this. And Representative Holt, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to once again run this last year. As you may recall, last session we passed this off the House floor unanimously, only to have it be short-circuited due to COVID. But I think the message that we're all sending here today is that the unspeakably offensive defense that has been successfully used is not welcome in Iowa and will be banned in Iowa. That concludes my opening comments.
Is there a discussion? The chair recognizes the lady from Lynn, Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Kaufman. The gay and trans panic defense, or LGBTQ+ panic defense, is a defense used by individuals who seek to evade personal responsibility for violent crimes, including murder, by arguing that their violent actions were justified by finding out another person's gender identity or sexual orientation, or by receiving a nonviolent pass or come on from an LGBTQ+ person. This defense has been used in cases you may have read about, including Matthew Shepard, Brandon Tina, Marco McMillan, Gwen Arroyo, Angie Zapata, and Isla Nettles. The American Medical Association has called violence against LGBTQ people, specifically trans or non-gender conforming people, an epidemic. And at this time, I would like to remember Kadari Johnson, as we did last year. Kadari was a teenager from Burlington, Iowa, who identified as gender fluid. Kadari's classmates remember their unforgettable smile and contagious laugh. In spring of 2016, Kadari was found dead in an alley, soaked in bleach, their mouth gagged with a plastic bag, and pants pulled down, exposing their genitals. They had been shot twice in the chest. 2 men were later charged in connection with Kadari's death. They had intended to have sex with Kadari and then murdered them when the men found out that Kadari had male genitalia, both claiming that they were in a fit of rage. Now, these men were convicted of murder, but that will never make up for the loss of light that Kadari brought into the lives of all who knew them. Please join me in a brief moment of silence. Thank you. Some of you know that I personally am a member of the LGBTQ community. Growing up in the 90s, the murder of Matthew Shepard left an indelible mark on every LGBTQ+ person I know. This summer, I took a socially distanced road trip, and when I was in Wyoming, I went through Laramie, and I visited the GPS coordinates of the wooden fence where the young Matthew Shepard was left almost unrecognizable due to blunt force trauma to die. And 6 days later, he did die of his injuries. To this day, this seemingly ordinary spot is marked by ribbons, flowers, and notes. I also visited the memorial bench on the University of Wyoming campus, where just like the once rural place of his abandonment, pilgrims like myself left poems, notes, beads, flowers, and many other expressions of solidarity, grief, or even healing. I sat in silence, my heart heavy for many minutes, until I felt tears spilling out onto my cheeks. As a high school student, Matthew's murder was simultaneously shocking and not shocking at the same time. I can still feel that feeling that I felt in my spine when I heard about Matthew Shepard and Brandon Tina, too. It's like a feeling of being immobilized. I was 14 years old the first time I was called a dyke. Like lots of other kids growing up in the Midwest, I may have gone to a few parties adjacent to cornfields. Just saying. I remember the fear, though, that rippled through my friends and I the time that some guys pulled up, loudly directing homophobic slurs towards my friends and I. One of them had a baseball bat or a crowbar and used it to demolish the rural route mailbox close to the front of that property. And we didn't know if they would stop there. Back to this bill, as recently as 2018, the gay and trans panic defense has been successfully used to mitigate a murder charge. James Miller killed his neighbor, Daniel Spencer, and claimed self-defense on the grounds that Daniel Spencer had made a pass at him. He was found not guilty of murder and manslaughter despite the fact that he never argued that Spencer had tried to cause him harm, and there was no forensic evidence indicating that Miller had been physically threatened. Ultimately, a jury sentenced Miller to 10 years probation on a lesser charge for a violent crime that cost another person his life. 10 years probation. And with that verdict, a Texas jury was willing to absolve a killer of personal responsibility for his actions because his victim was gay. And that sends the message that gay people's lives aren't as valuable as others and that gay people deserve to die. Here in Iowa, we value all members of our community. It's sad that we have to make it clear that a person's gender identity or sexual identity or orientation is no excuse for violence against them, but we do. So thank you to Representative Kaufman, Representative Klein, and Representative Wolf, who served on the subcommittee for this bill, members of the judiciary who supported the bill, including the chair, Representative Holt. I ask that all members of the Iowa House support this bill today. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the gentleman from Cedar moves the bill be read for the last time and placed on its passage. Are there objections? The chair hears none, and the clerk will read.
House File 310, a bill for an act relating to the defense of justification and diminished capacity for certain violent crimes being enacted by the General Assembly of the State of Iowa.
Question now is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor of its passage vote aye. All those opposed vote no. Clerk, open the machine and receive your vote. Judge votes aye. Stade votes aye. Moore of Scott votes aye. Landon votes aye. Height votes aye. Jurdy votes aye. Have you all now voted? The clerk closed the machine. The House pay attention to the results of the vote. Those voting aye, 94. Those voting no, 0. Absent or not voting, 6. Bill having received a constitutional majority is declared to pass the House. Are there objections to the title? The chair hears none. The title is agreed to.